Awesome. So thank you for Brittany, first off, having me do this presentation today and have this just lunch and learn HR Power Hour Q&A series. Before I begin my introduction, I just like to give a bit of a background on why I started this. Obviously during the height of COVID, many businesses were challenged with not only having to pivot their business operations, but dealing with a lot of employee relation issues that they've never found themselves having to deal with before. So since HR is, just where my expertise lies, I looked at this as my little way of giving back to the small business community as far as providing a platform that small business owners can come together and just really talk about those challenges that they are experiencing and getting those quick rapid answers rather than sitting through different webinars that just covers a myriad of topics. So this presentation is for small business owners to get their answers, get their questions answered directly. I will like to provide, again, just a quick glimpse of my background. So I do have over 15 years of operations and human resources leadership. I have my master's in HR management as well as my bachelor's in business. And I do think that that is something that I pride myself on being unique because I am able to really understand that business owners' challenges when it comes to the strategic planning of their operations. I also have my professional certification, my SHRM CP, and I belong to a lot of various different membership professional association programs that keep me on my toes and keep me abreast of all of the different trends that happens within HR management. HR philosophy, I founded this company in 2015. And again, I just really pride myself on being a one-stop shop for small business owners. And you can see all of the services that we offer below, but this was really important to me because I come from a family-owned business where my parents operated a business in the city of Chicago for over 30 plus years. So I am deeply invested and connected to, helping small business owners because I understand the challenges. I understand the limited resources. And unfortunately, I know that human resources is often overlooked when it comes to either starting a business or expanding business operations, because let's face it, HR is not a revenue generating position, but it is very much needed because it really, I will say, mitigate those liabilities that business owners can face by ignoring compliance and employer regulations that are either local, state, or federally implemented. So that's where my passion really comes from, and delivering HR and again spreading the word to small business owners. So that's why I offer things such as this. And again, it's of no cost because I really am invested in just the knowledge piece of it. So again, I know typically in these Q&A series, I do like to really engage with the small business employers just to really understand what are some of the challenges that they're facing, especially their specific industries. And again, when we have this conversation, everyone is really learning from each other, right? And then also, as so in my seat, I can offer some advice and obviously still make sure that you're consulting with your employment lawyers or legal attorneys with any decisions or contract agreements that you get into, but definitely just providing this resource for small business owners. So at this time, if there are some pending questions that you may have or scenarios, again, we do understand that it's a public platform. Confidentiality should be key, so we shouldn't use any employee specific names or any things of that nature. But if you have any questions, definitely feel free to ask.
So, Shane, I do have a question that I think would be relevant to businesses joining in later or watching this in another time. And I used to be a small business owner, and I did have people that worked for me that did steal from me, but I didn't have it caught on video camera. And so what's the best way to go about dealing with that situation? In a way that's compliant. That I don't know that you. What do you?
Yeah.
I had no idea what to do, basically. So.
No, so what I always tell any employer who may be dealing with any type of issue that involves employee disciplinary is to make sure that you are documenting. Um, Always think about what's going to uphold if there's ever a legal matter that will occur. So we can't, it's not just good enough to say, like, hey, I feel this employee is stealing from me. We have to prove it.
Right.
So the first thing will be to document whatever situation that occurred that you think the employee may have did something that was unethical. And then once you have that scenario documented, I'm a firm believer of communication comes first. So why not have a simple conversation with that employee? But it's very important not to be accusatory.
Mhm.
Hey, this happened. I'm questioning all of the employees to, kind of get an understanding of why this happened. Is there anything that you can offer? That will be my step one per se. The second step will be if it was to happen again, now you have to document. And obviously, this is a very broad subject. So it depends on what's being stolen, what department. You can start to narrow down as far as who was on shift during that time. So you understand that you may start with 15 employees, but narrowing it down, you may get to a group of 3 employees. If you have surveillance cameras, obviously public use areas can be surveillance. Obviously, you can't put them in more private areas such as your restrooms, but if your public areas are surveillance, go back to your surveillance cameras. But anything with dealing with employee relations matter, document, document, document. You will hear that from every HR professional.
Sarah, is there anything in particular that you guys deal with over there at Begin Within? Oh, she's muted.
Oh, she's on mute now.
I don't have any particular questions. I just came on to listen and learn, but no particular employee issues. No.
Okay. So, one thing that I will bring up that is obviously been such a hot button topic is dealing with the impact of COVID and returning employees to the workplace. And so, as we get more vaccines become available to the different classifications of employees, you also have the idea of, do we make vaccinations mandatory or not when returning to the workplace? So I know that this is something that I am hearing from a lot of small business owners like, hey, can I make this required or not? And so I think it's really important to follow the guidelines of CDC and the IDPH, because once you implement, for us it may seem like a no-brainer. Okay, you have to have your vaccination card in order to return to work. That may be a very slippery slope, because you may have some employees who don't want to be vaccinated. You may have some who may claim religious exemptions. You may also have employees who now fear, if it's not mandated and I'm vaccinated, I don't want to come to work and I know that, Joe Smith wasn't vaccinated. And so now it's a situation where employers face, if you make this mandate required, you can receive backlash from the person that does not want to become vaccinated. And then in scenario B, you have a situation where the person who is vaccinated I don't feel safe coming to work knowing that it's not required, and it's others that are not vaccinated within the workplace. So they try to, claim the idea of the workplace isn't safe. So this will be a very interesting topic that will not just, play out on the HR spectrum, but legally. And so what I've just been advising all of my small business employers is to follow whatever the CDC and the IDPH guidelines are. If they are not putting it out there that it's mandatory or required, you probably shouldn't either, just to, avoid it. Because then if the CDC says that it's required, then you go ahead and you make it a requirement. And now you have a supporting regulation to show why you did so, because it was regulated by the state or it was regulated federally. But until then, it's just maybe the safest bet to just continue to put out that resource, as far as saying that, we encourage the vaccinations, getting your employees that information on where to get vaccinated. That should be the role of the employer at this time, is just to encourage, provide the resource, and let the employees decide and not make it mandatory, just to avoid any kind of legal issues. And obviously your job is kind of move forward to your job as the employer on what you should be doing post COVID, or even, returning and reopening your business, is making sure that your employees feel safe. I always tell people during COVID, I've never talked so much in my life. Like this is the time where you had to over communicate, even if your communication was, hey, I don't know what's going on right now, but we're looking into it. It's important that you are overly communicating during this unknown time, because many are confused. And when it comes with confusion, there comes that uncertainty that comes where, many employers are thinking that maybe this employee is being combative, or, they're not trying to come to work. They really are afraid and confused. So that's where communication becomes so pertinent. It becomes very important that we are communicating. We understand you're afraid. We understand that, there's not a lot of information out there, or there's a lot of uncertainty. But here are the measures that we are putting in place to make your return back to the office, or, the plant, or whatever your work setting may be, safe. And so that kind of leads to the other topic of business continuity. How do we make sure that business continues to run during this shaky time? You have many employers who've had to really invest and ramp up their technology capabilities. Maybe you've never thought about it before, but just maybe making sure that employees have, laptops that they are able to have mobile. Because even if the situation is where your office is open, what if that employee has to quarantine? What if someone in their house has to quarantine, but business still has to operate? So again, business owners have to pivot and see what does this business continuity plan looks like. In regards to that, again, if they're on site, understanding your workspace. How does everyone need to be spaced out to make sure that everyone is feeling comfortable? I always tell business employers, don't be afraid to go in on that off day or after hours, or on that Sunday, and actually visualize your space. Look at it and see how you may have to rearrange some desks, rearrange, your phone lines, and just make some minor changes that can be such a huge impact, whether it's investing in the plexiglass that everyone has, and if you're a customer facing organization. But really visualizing and planning what that will look like, and showing it to your employees and sharing it. That's the most important part. Don't just, oh, you'll see when you get here, when you come back. No, share it with them prior to them coming back. Hey guys, we have a safety plan in place. Here's what it will look like when you return back to the office. I guarantee you that will be so much more appreciated than them not knowing. So now that you have that visual safety plan of what safety looks like in COVID with your employees, the second thing will be to now establish some protocols. Maybe the things we did before we're not doing anymore, such as sharing common area, maybe, whether it's a microwave or a coffee area or things of that nature. Maybe there's a lot of back and forth in between offices. We're not doing that anymore. So develop those protocols, or if you're not able to socially distance, make sure that your mask is on. Or some places, if they do have more of a confined area, they are requiring employees to wear masks the whole day because they're not able to socially distance. And I think that it's important, again, to write down those guidelines and make sure that your employees understand what the protocol is, they understand what it looks like. And so it kind of just eases their comfort into coming back into the workplace. And last but not least, obviously make sure that you're stacked on your PPE, whether it's your hand sanitizer, your mask that you're able to offer employees if they don't have their own, making sure that you have a protocol in place if someone becomes affected. What is your business going to do? You're going to isolate that area, make sure that all employees um, are evacuated from that particular area. Make sure that you have your cleaning and sanitary company, on speed dial and contacted. So, hey, if we have a possible situation, here is who we can call to make sure that the workspace is completely disinfected. So again, I just been finding that that's really one of the hot button topics that a lot of small business owners have been really sharing with me as far as their concerns during this time. I know that a lot of them also are dealing with the issues of managing a remote workforce. So that has really been a huge challenge, because you may find that some positions, they're like, hey, you don't need to come back to the office anymore. Have you guys been experiencing any of that at all, or?
We worked remotely for a while. Now everyone's kind of coming back in, still not completely full time, but I was curious if, what, is there a situation where people would, I mean, can you require people to come into the office? Is that, or no, can you not do that right now?
You definitely can. You can require people to come back to the office, especially if, as the employer, you have done your due diligence to make sure that it is a safe space. So there is nothing that is mandating, people to work remotely. And I know that a lot of employees, I've come across that too, where a lot of employees are like, they can't make me come back to the office. And it's like, well, yes, they can. But what they do have to do is make sure that they are providing you, I mean, that's OSHA, right? With the safe work environment, making sure that they are providing you with the necessary PPE, which will be your mask, and having that on hand for employers. So, I mean, for the employees. So, no, they can definitely mandate for, employees to come back to work. And again, I think that communication piece is very essential, to say, hey, this is what we have done. And we are, whether it's next month or in 2 to 3 weeks, we are requiring employees to come back to work. And what I think is a very strategic thing to do is maybe not require everyone to come back 100% all at one time. Do it in phases and ease people back into the rotation of things. So maybe have a call out group A, have a call out group B and C. And so you're phasing back in that return to work where it is 100%. Because if you went from having, most of your workforce to be away, and then can you imagine, even if it's a 20-person office, like if everyone came back in on the same day, like everyone's looking like this at each other, right? Like, don't touch me and get away. So definitely implementing it in phases, and maybe have a first group come in, make them get adjusted, have that second group come in, and again, make more adjustments if needed. And then you should be at 100%. And again, just making sure everyone is safe. And that's your job as the employer. That's for you to figure out, is to make sure that your space, that you are providing your employees, that they feel safe to be, productive in the workplace, essentially.
Yep.
So that's a good one.
Yeah. And are you liable? I mean, as a business owner, if something does happen where there's an outbreak or anything like that, I mean, I know if somebody gets hurt, you have to use insurance and things like that. So how does that work with COVID?
So it's really the same deal. And so again, if you worked in a essential business, they've kind of already been dealing with this, right? Because their operations never closed. So I worked for a municipality where dealing with, public worksmen and firemen and police. This COVID, pandemic didn't stop anything for them. They still had to come in and report to work every day and perform their, public worksman duties. So when you have a situation where COVID, there's maybe an outbreak in the workplace, or if someone contracts COVID and now they fear they have been exposed, depending on the situation, you still always have to do contact tracing. And so it's so funny, because even working as an HR, I almost kind of feel like my own like little CDC agent, because you are essentially doing all of those things in your role. So if someone is reports a positive test, you have to find out, okay, well, where did they get it from? Okay, now you're questioning everyone that maybe is within that department. Have you had any symptoms? Have you had any exposure, especially when I was dealing with people such as your police or your firemen? You have to understand, has there been any contact exposure or risk that you know of? And then you can report it to your workers' comp carrier. However, there was some, confusion on people thinking, well, if you report it to the workers' comp carrier, it's an automatic claim. And it's not. They're going to do their due diligence to research it as well and see, okay, do you have maybe a spouse at home who's also maybe in a high exposure role, who's a nurse? They're going to, or a teacher, they're going to reevaluate all those things. So what I tell employers is, if you have an employee who comes to you and say that, hey, I'm COVID positive, I believe that I got it here, submit it to your workers' comp carrier. They will do the investigation on it. Because now, if you don't submit it to your workers' comp carrier, now you have a whole other situation in which that employee can blame you, as far as, well, why didn't you report this is actually a reporting incident. Why didn't you report my incident? So it is best practice to submit it to workers' comp if you see that it may be substantiated that the employee was exposed at the workplace. And the worker comp carrier, from my experience in the carriers that I've dealt with, they're going to do their own evaluation. They're going to do their own interview with that employee to determine, was that exposure, did it really occur at work or not? And then the onus is now on that carrier. as far as if they accept or deny the claim. It's not on you as the employer. You've done what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
So that definitely is something that, like I said, I'm pretty sure people whom are in the essential business have already really crossed that path a lot of times during this pandemic outbreak, because their operations never stopped. And so their employees were still reporting to work. And again, we all have families at home who may have been potentially exposed, and we're bringing that into the workplace. So I would say let the carrier deal with fighting out if it's a valid workers' comp claim or not. You just do your due diligence and report it.
So what happens when there's actually clients like coming in? Like we have a lot of like retailers, hair salons, therapy, where you have clients coming in to your place of work. And what happens if you have an outbreak there and then clients get it? Like how do you work that out?
So I would say when you have a very contact heavy business operations, like you said, a salon or a therapy um, organization, again, establishing those protocols so that first you're minimizing that contamination at all. Have those protocols in place. Secondly, if there is something that is to occur, you do have to make sure that you are notifying all of the possible close contacts. So I remember when this all first started with COVID, one of the things that I would do for some of my clients is we create templates. So I would create like a close contact template. So in case someone did test positive, I would basically fill in the blanks. And of course, you have to make sure that the person who tested positive remains confidential. They don't need to know the person's name. It's just a general template to say, hey, we understand that you were maybe in our office on this date. We have been recently notified that someone, tested positive for COVID. Want to make sure, again, maybe you get tested. There's times where you can ask if someone has been in close contact, can you test before you re-enter, the facility? Just having those different protocols and scenarios in place before your business reopens, um, it will save you a lot of time from scrambling. So I understand that you probably can't just totally avoid it, but do your due diligence at the beginning to plan to minimize those risks, and then have your action plan in place in case something like this does happen. So if it's a customer, what if the customer calls back to your salon and say, hey, I know I was just there on Wednesday getting my hair done. I just found out I tested positive for COVID. Okay, who was your stylist? What time were you in? Understanding that's why all of that planning is so important, because if you do have a potential positive case, you can have it restricted to one area rather than it's just being maybe a full blown outbreak amongst everyone. It may just be confined to one area because of the way that you have spread things out. So that's why it's very important to plan and plan out every scenario, bad as well, so that you're never caught off guard and you can put action into place, because this is something that needs to happen immediately. Once you find out, you need to notify close contact so that they can properly do what they need to do, whether it's quarantine, whether it's get tested. They have to, all of their actions is really depending on being notified, right? So also the whole disinfecting process. That's why I said it's really important too to have that cleaning company or the disinfecting company that you are partnered with, where you already meet with them, you know their prices, you understand their availability to come out and service your business, so that when there is a situation like this, it can be an immediate call. And so now you're just following your guidelines, your steps. call close contacts, get the area disinfected, or evacuate the area, get it disinfected, things of that nature.
Mhm. And so, if can you just lay out like some of the kind of most asked questions in regards to like small businesses that have part-time or contract employees? Like in general, do you receive like certain things that they ask?
Absolutely. So there are a lot of businesses who they are not confident on if employees are W-2 employees or 1099 employees. And so the couple of factors that I always use to distinguish the two is first, if that employee is required to do a specific job and you have to provide them with all the tools, if you have to provide them with all of the information as far as how to perform the job, and you have to provide them with the tools, you're giving them a specific time to be there, those are more than likely W-2 employees. 1099 employees are more so your professional, where they are bringing a value to your business. And they're providing maybe their own resources, they're providing their own expertise that is contributing to your business. And so that can be that class. That's how you can understand the distinction between a W-2 versus a 1099. And you definitely want to make sure that you are clear with that, because I've had businesses in the past whom had issues with the IRS because they were misclassifying employees and placing them as contractors when in fact they were W-2 employees. It was actually a trucking company where they were had their truck drivers as 1099s, and the IRS said, well, wait a minute, if these individuals are driving your trucks, you're paying the insurance on those trucks, um, those are employees. Those are not 1099 contractors. A 1099 contractor will come with their own truck. They will have their own insurance most often. So just understanding the dynamics of, are you contributing to this individual, or is this individual contributing to your business, and what resources are they bringing, can be a very telltale sign onto who's 1099 versus W-2.
Yeah, and in terms of like 1099, when you actually have to file that form, is there like a certain amount of time that people have to work for you to, like, let's say you're working with a contractor on something, do they have to work a certain amount of hours for you to have to file that 1099,
No,
or
I just
is
always
it?
tell people whatever revenue that you pay to
Mhm.
them should definitely be a 1099. And you
Okay.
just make sure that you're generating a 1099 before you even begin that project. Get a W-9 from them,
Yep.
so that you can, get their information and generate a 1099 for your expenses and what you've paid them, no matter the dollar amount, on the services that they have provided for your company.
Sure, it makes it easier during tax time anyway.
Absolutely, to separate the two. And even with auditing, I've had firms that I would see they were interested when they were doing a workers' comp audit to see, okay, also, who are you paying a 1099 to? Because they want to verify that, again, this is not someone who should be on payroll, and you're just paying them a 1099 to avoid the workers' comp insurance and to avoid the taxes. So I've seen where, and especially in public sector, you will see where your workers' comp carrier will ask for your 1099s, and
Mhm.
will go through each one as far as, what does this person do and what are you paying them for, to really kind of determine that exact thing.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they do. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And so one other thing too, just kind of going along the lines of, W-2 employees, I know sometimes a lot of employers fear making that commitment to have W-2 employees. So they try to push the idea of 1099s. And so again, just understanding those IRS, regulations and what classifies that. I know a lot of employers try to avoid it too because they don't want to deal with the unemployment portion
Mhm.
and dealing with if you fire someone or if someone leaves, are you liable for paying unemployment for them? And so it can become such a headache because you're dealing with um, again, someone may be terminated because they were literally late for a month, or they I've had situations where it was violence involved, or it can just be a myriad of situations, and but the person will go and file an unemployment claim. And these things is where I preach, where having that HR consulting or having someone who has that employee relations background is so important, because it's these little things such as even unemployment. With your rate is high, it can be very costly for a business owner, and they may not know how to properly contest unemployment claims. They may not know how to properly really um, handle those unemployment hearings. And so those are just some of the things that I come in and I really help with as far as navigating through that process on how to contest claims, because it does become costly for a company after a while. If you have, you know, a company that may have one person on unemployment versus a company that may have seven employees, riding their unemployment through your firm, if you're a chargeable employer, that's more money because you're now being charged a higher rate as an employer. So it's really important to fight those unemployment claims, or understanding that when you do terminate, making sure it's a clean termination and that all of your documentation is in place so that you are properly able to really contest those claims to keep your rate at a much lower rate. And the same thing happens with workers' comp too. Not saying that you should ever falsify any, workers' comp claims, but obviously the more claims you have, the higher your rate will be. So it's really important to make sure you have a safe working environment for all of your employees to minimize those risks. So you don't have a lot of claims that will drive up your rate. So yeah, that's a very good question. And even with following along with disciplinary issues, um, again, understanding how to, it's very important. I tell employers all the time, some of them have the mentality, and I know my father did, as far as, this is my company, I run it the way I want to run it. And, if someone isn't, falling in line or doing what they think they should be doing, or what the job calls for, they, just terminate them. And it's like, but hold on, make sure that all your ducks are in a row before you pull that trigger in doing so. Because again, all of these things, yes, you can get rid of that employee. Yes, you can fire them, but do it in a way so that your business is not paying for it in the long run.
Right.
Because that employee can be gone, but you're still paying for them if it caused you to have more unemployment claims and get a higher rate.
Yep.
So
Absolutely. And can you tell me a little bit about like how your company works, and do you work on like a contract basis with small businesses, or?
So I don't actually, and I think that I know a lot of consulting businesses really try to engage in contract work. And again, I know my approach is a little bit different because I come from a small business, so I get it. I really work on a la carte basis and a project basis. So I come into businesses and I really assess, where is your need? Obviously, the business owners may have an idea of, hey, I just need a handbook. Okay, we can take care of doing an employee handbook for you. But how are you going to enforce this once you have it in place? How are you going to implement all of these policies and introduce them to your employees? How are you going to follow up and make sure if someone breaks one of these policies that you have in your brand new handbook, what does that look like? So really helping businesses understand their operations and understand, I would say, the consequences, because most times when business owners open a business, it's because they have a good product and service that they just want to get out, right? They're not really focused on the managing employees perspective. It often goes neglected. So that's where HR philosophy comes in and really ties in all of those pieces for the employer to really just help them understand where their liabilities are, where their risk. But then, aside from all the negative stuff, also understanding how to optimize your workforce, how to strategize your people so that you can grow and be better. And so that's what we do really in a nutshell. And so just when it comes to contacting my business, I don't really engage in contracts. It's really based off projects. What do you see done? I really pride myself on being affordable, again, because I get it. And so I definitely would never want to put a small business owner in any type of situation where they feel that they really have to choose on the viability of their business versus just being in compliance.
Mhm.
They need to go together.
Yep.
And so yeah, that's definitely how we operate, and I pride myself on that. And I think that's what has really kind of made us successful to date.
Amazing. I think that's great because I know we do have a lot of like smaller businesses that only have, a handful of employees in our service area, but that doesn't mean they don't need help. And, I think that being able to have a resource, a professional resource to be able to reach out to on a need kind of basis is wonderful. And I'm excited to share the information with everyone.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I thank you so much for inviting me to even have this conversation. And I definitely look forward to a partnership down the road to meet with other small business owners and hopefully do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to cut the recording,